Hello everyone and welcome to story time today. Today I want to tell you about my coding story or my coding journey. As you know, I make tutorials on Adobe scripts, extensions, and plugins and other things similar to that. But today I want to tell you about kind of my start to where I am today. A lot of people ask me this via email and on Discord of how they can get started. So just to give you some perspective and thoughts, I'm going to explain how I did it. Of course, check out all the links in the description if you're curious about some products I make. You can subscribe down there, join the channel as a follower, check out the Discord and a whole bunch of other stuff. But let's go ahead and jump straight into the story. So for me, my first exposure to coding was basically at school. I mean, you could say that I did a little bit of coding experimentation at home because I've always been chronically on the computer, but my first kind of actual experience of learning and going through stuff was in high school when I took an HTML and CSS class. Now, of course, this is all relative. A lot of people don't consider HTML or CSS languages, more just like markups basically, or almost like spoken word, not really like actually hard coding. But this was my introduction, and I flew by that class very quickly. Basically, we had a workbook with lessons, and I would fly through the lessons to the point where I had months left of the class, and I had already completed all the material. And there's this thing called JavaScript, and my teacher said, I have no idea anything about JavaScript. It's very difficult, but you can give it a shot if you want. And I did, and I also found it way too hard to learn, so I gave up on it. But that was basically my first exposure to coding, and during that time period as well, I also did a little bit of experimentation on my own. I remember old channels like The New Boston had coding tutorials that I would watch, and that got me into trying C++ at home. I could create very basic things, like I learned how to do if statements, for loops, switch statements, and I could make very, very basic things, but nothing of like actual use. I just got my feet wet, but didn't really like learn anything to become fluent. And if I had to date this time period, it'd probably be between 2009 and 2011-ish. But after that, in 2013, I was starting to, make a lot of videos at school for projects. People were aware that I was a little bit technically inclined and knew that I could make videos. So, come 2013, I was tasked for my swim team to create basically three swimming slideshows in like 1 or 2 nights. And this overwhelmed me because they basically said, we need these done. Here's some songs, and here's hundreds of photos. We need you to make some nice slideshows for the end of the year presentation. This was very overwhelming because, like I said, hundreds of photos, but not only that, they were in different formats. Some were portrait, some were landscape, some were different resolutions, shot on different cameras. And I'm just like, I know how to make a slideshow in After Effects. I drag the images in, or I use some kind of built-in sequencing thing, but I need to make them super long, have music, have animations. I wanted to at least make them a little bit nicer than just image, image, image. I wanted to add blurs and fades and all that kind of stuff as well. And during my kind of night of stress, I remembered hearing about something called scripting. And I don't honestly know what my experience of trying out scripts or even trying to learn it was to that point, but it was basically zero. All I had was my background in HTML, CSS, and a little bit of C++ experimentation. So I scoured the internet. I found a couple of tutorials, very basic ones. I believe there was a Creative Cow basics tutorial that I followed just to kind of learn like the syntax and basics. And then I want to say Video Pro Coalition was also a thing then. I may have found those, but maybe not. I basically found, the guide and a tutorial or two that taught the very basics. And under this immense pressure, I basically had to learn it, otherwise I would fail and let down my entire swim team and, other people as well. So I had my goal set. I need to make a slideshow generator script of some kind. A thing that I can choose a folder full of images and or just import them and collect them all, choose a song, and then have it automatically sequence them, add nice animations, maybe some effects, and just basically have it a one-click solution that allows me to create 3 slideshows. And even if it fails, I can maybe try it again with a variation because it's going to be random. And that was my goal. Now, with a big goal in mind, the way I learned, and I think the way everybody should learn, at least programming or maybe even any skill, is you have your big goal, but you then need to have your small goals lined up. You need to be able to say, what's the first thing that I need to learn and implement, and then go down the line. So I needed to first figure out how to write a script or how to even open a program to create a script. Then after that, I would need to be able to import the images into After Effects. Then I need to learn how to create a composition. Then I need to learn how to import the footage into the composition. Then I need to learn how to, you know, scale them so they fit inside of the composition correctly. Then I need to figure out how to add effects, add keyframes, and basically the goal is to go one by one through these checkpoints, and each of those is going to be a separate struggle. It's going to be a struggle when you don't know any code to figure out how to even create a script. It's going to be another struggle to figure out how to create a composition. But through each of these struggles, you are basically solidifying your knowledge of a new skill inside of the programming language. And despite the fact that that can be super frustrating and difficult, once you push through each of those goals, you will slowly make more and more progress towards fluency in that skill. So it may have taken me only 5 to 10 minutes to figure out how to create a composition or import the footage automatically, but maybe it took me an hour or two to figure out how to do keyframes and that kind of thing, which is pretty accurate, I'd say. And I came across this sort of strategy by accident. This was totally out of stress and anxiety of trying to get these slideshows done. I literally was forced through the means of embarrassment or failure to learn this programming language to a degree where I could make a basic tool. So, I don't know the exact amount of time it took me to make it, but it was probably a good 5 to 10 hours to make this initial slideshow script. And not only does going through this kind of learning process solidify your knowledge of the skills that you're learning because of how much time you're spending, looking at all these different problems and identifying what's causing them and finding solutions on your own, it also gives you real practical experience. You're not doing like hello world or just, I can add 1 + 1 and make an output variable. You are actually doing things that are applicable to real world projects. So that was the essentially start of everything in 2013, and I encourage everyone to learn the same way. Not necessarily put yourself under so much pressure for failure, but to take a project and break it down of what your goals are and accomplish those goals one by one. And from there, it may be difficult, but you're going to learn a lot and solidify that knowledge and become better. So after that, I kind of got a little bit of a scripting bug. I wasn't like scripting every single day as I basically do now, but I kind of was like, wow, this is a superpower to have to be able to automate these things. So sometime in 2014, I don't know if it was the beginning or middle of 2014, I released Instant Slideshow Creator. This was essentially a culmination of that initial script that I made. This is on Envato or VideoHive, which is basically dead now, but it's still available there. You can choose the picture order from A to Z, Z to A, or random. You can choose the seconds per image. You can choose whether you want to include video and include the video sound as well. You can choose to include audio or no audio. You can choose the composition settings, the image scaling, whether you want it to scale up and down and up, random. You can add soft transitions as well as add to media encoder. Not all of these features, of course, were available in the initial one that I created, but I basically took the concept and I went ham with it, and I created this tool because this is a great way to actually make money and use my skills to create real stuff. And of course, I went on to make other VideoHive products like Timer Creator, which Timer Creator was stemmed from me also swimming, actually. I wanted to be able to put a timer at the bottom left of my screen when I was working on my swimming videos so I could see the times and all that. Then I also created CreditSmith, which allowed you to automate credits, Tilt Shifter, which kind of created a tilt shift effect. These are all basically very simple scripts. FX Tutor as well was one of my favorites. Back in the day, I just wanted to make a script that taught you what each of the effects in After Effects do, and that's what I did. I actually forgot I made that one. And then batch title script, another one out of necessity. Essentially, when I was working on tutorials before I ever got into scripting, I was making tutorials for companies like Wondershare, and if you're familiar with them, they have a whole line of products, but they paid me to make 50 to 100 tutorials at a time, and I needed to also create titles. So what I would do is take a composition with text, and I automated to create each of the titles they gave me based on a spreadsheet so that I could instantly export all those things, probably saving me 100 hours a month of work. So I created all these scripts over time after my initial scripting journey kind of thing. And I just continued from that point to learn more and more. And not only that, I kind of did what I always do with knowledge, and that is to create videos about it. If you were on my channel a long, long time ago, we're talking almost 15 years ago, I was releasing tutorials on how to do basic After Effects things that I learned that I was using in my own videos. And once I started learning scripting, I started releasing videos on how to make scripts. So come May 5th, 2025, yes, I'm old now. Over a decade ago at this point, I released my first scripting video. Despite this video being ancient, it still gets a lot of views and a lot of attention, which is funny because a lot of it is like super old, not good quality, but I basically wanted to share with people because I found it so hard to find tutorials and guides when I was learning how to script. So I thought if I can share my knowledge with people, then that will make anyone else who wants to learn have a much easier entry to the scripting world. And also, me teaching it and forcing myself to record it is going to make it so that I solidify the knowledge in my head of what I'm teaching. Because when you teach, you are also making sure you know what you're talking about. So I created 2 scripting tutorials in the same month in 2025, and then kind of just went off to do other videos again. After that, 2 years later almost, in 2017, I started making more tutorials. The first one being how to make a batch processing script. I had people starting to come to me asking for requests, but I also had lots of things, ideas in my head, and lots of things that I wanted to experiment with. So I really started making tutorials quite often, as you can see. We're talking, I think this is when I was doing 2 a week for a period of time. And while I was sharing all this, I was getting more attention. More people were reaching out to me, wondering if they could hire me to do things, as well as if I could make certain tutorials of their request. So this was like a full looping cycle. I was doing tutorials on things that I was learning in my own spare time. Those tutorials were solidifying my knowledge of that type of scripting or whatever I was doing. That knowledge was being transmitted to other people who could learn, or those people would then be like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. We should hire him to make something for us. So I was sharing my knowledge, which a lot of people were against at that time. Like I would email some people about questions I had, and they would be very close guarded with their secrets. And I don't want to be that. I want to share everything within reason, of course. But this was a self-serving cycle that was providing me with increasing amounts of work involving scripting. That work was teaching me things. I was then sharing those things, those concepts in tutorials. Those tutorials were solidifying my knowledge, getting me more people reaching out to me, etc., etc. And the feeling of people telling me, thank you so much for making these tutorials, there are no resources online, and your tutorials have helped me so much, really make me feel good. And that is really the only reason I make tutorials to this day, is because of the positive feedback that I get from people. Some of the most beautiful things that I've read from people are that because of my tutorials, they now have a job and can, support themselves through coding. And to me, that's crazy that I was the one that helped them get a job. Uh, I guess you could say that some people technically helped me in the beginning get a job, but at that time, a Creative Cow tutorial and a couple of Video Pro Coalition videos weren't teaching me how to create products and super awesome concepts like I'm teaching. And this is, of course, just scripting. Eventually, I would figure out there are extensions and plugins, and those were even bigger hurdles than scripting. Not only were there 0 tutorials on making extensions or plugins, there was terrible documentation. So I had to figure out all of this stuff on my own. I've made a lot of bad products that are out there. We're talking like really bad interfaces, really buggy functionality, but the concepts, they worked. Like being able to browse a bunch of presets, drag them into the program, or add templates. I figured all that out and then shared it. But of course, learning extensions is much, much harder than learning scripts, and learning plugins is way harder than learning extensions. And from there, I just continued to self-feed the cycle. I learned scripting, learn extensions, learn plugins, make tutorials, get feedback, get tutorial requests, get freelance work. And I'd say the craziest time was during a certain pandemic we all lived through. A lot of people made goals during that period. My goal during that period was to create like a ton of tutorials. I think I released 2 tutorials a week for almost 2 years. So I've come up with plenty of ideas, and I feel like I'm out of ideas, or sometimes I forget which tutorials I've even done before. I often have to go back in my library and check, did I make this video before, or am I remaking the same thing? But yes, that's kind of the overall story from how I went from no programming at all to where I am today. It essentially comes down to learning a new skill, setting goals and accomplishing those goals one by one, and then continually building upon that foundation. The more you learn, the easier it is to learn more. So like, if I just jump straight into plugins without knowing scripting or extensions, that would have been impossible, nearly impossible. And I have mentioned in that my plugin videos, I've failed to learn plugins 3 times because it was just too complicated. So it's just about pushing through, getting those goals done, and then sharing your knowledge and communicating with others to make sure you solidify that knowledge, show that you know things, as well as make connections and then money. If you guys enjoyed this story time, make sure you hit the thumbs up button down below. Check out the links in the description to all the things that I've created over time. And of course, there are plenty of scripting, extensions, and plugins videos on my channel. You can learn literally almost anything you want and become a hero coder, just like all the people who watch my videos. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.